Heavenly Father, we thank you and we praise you for your word. It is the truth. We do receive it this day, written in our heart and mind. Thank you for the revelation you're bringing forth this day. And we praise you for it in Jesus' name. Amen. Please be seated if you would. We have finished talking about the subject of the judgment coming on the church. And now we're going to discuss what happens after the judgment of the church and at the time when the end of the church age comes. And we're going to discuss that today. Revelation chapter 4, verse 1, which is after the judgment on the church. After this I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven, and the first voice which I heard was as it were of a trumpet talking with me, and which said, Come up hither, and I will show you things which must be hereafter. Now he's going to be shown in heaven the things that are going to happen hereafter. Prior to this, he'd been shown all the things on earth. But now he's coming up to see what is going to happen in heaven. And we'll be covering more later, but we're going to jump over to chapter 5, verse 1. And when he sees something that's going on in heaven, he sees this. He said, I saw in the right hand of him that sat on the throne a book, written within and on the backside, sealed with 7 seals. This is something that he has seen. It's written on the within and it's written on the backside. That is a title deed. That is a deed of purchase. And it's sealed with 7 seals. We're going to be talking about this. Very important that we understand what Jesus was about to do and what needed to be done before he could accomplish that. First of all, we need to go back and understand that there are 7 days of the creation, which are 7,000 years of earth's existence. And remember, you must understand each day, Genesis chapter 1, verse 5, where it says, God called the light day, the darkness he called night, the evening and the morning were the first day. Each day is a 24-hour period. Don't let anybody try to tell you that it's a longer length of time. The evening and the morning, that is a 24-hour period, and every day was an evening and a morning. Now, we see that each day, specific day, as it says over in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8, Beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day, and this is the word mia, stressing the fact that it's talking about only one day, is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as only one day. No mistake about it. Each day means 1,000 years. The 7 days refer to the 7,000 years of Earth's existence. Each day is understand as a 1,000-year period. So from the beginning of creation, there were 4,000 years completed until Christ came. We see in John chapter 11, when he raised Lazarus from the dead physically, it was all pointing towards what Jesus was going to do of raising man from the dead spiritually, who was dead for 4,000 years because of the fall of Adam, when Adam fell and rebelled against God. John chapter 11, verse 17, here's when Jesus came and he found him laid in the grave 4 days. Well, it wasn't just 4 days there in the natural. The days, remember, is as 1,000 years. Man had been spiritually dead for 4,000 years. And we see the fact that when we come to verse 39, speaks about this again, when Jesus said, Take ye away the stone. Martha, the sister of him that was dead, said to him, Lord, by this time he stinketh, talking about Lazarus, for he hath been dead 4 days, or more literally, it says in the Greek that it is the 4th day. And the 4th day, that's the time when, after that, Jesus Christ came to accomplish the redemption. And this is also revealed when the gospel came to Cornelius. In Acts chapter 10, in verse 30, here's the testimony of Cornelius when the gospel came to the Gentiles. Cornelius said, 4 days ago I was fasting until this hour, and at the 9th hour I prayed in my house, and behold, a man stood before me in bright clothing. That was the angel who came and told him to send men to Joppa and to come and to get hold of Peter and have him come, and he was going to tell them words whereby they must be saved. Notice, 4 days, referring to the 4,000 years. And it was the 9th hour. Well, what's significant about the 9th hour? That is the very hour that Jesus Christ was on the cross, having been made sin, and then died, having given up his spirit, and then taken down to hell to accomplish the 3 days and 3 nights to pay the price for the sins of mankind. Matthew 27, verse 45, when the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land because Jesus now had become sin. And it says in verse 46, about the 9th hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, that is to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Because he was made sin with all the sins of mankind laid upon him, the Father left him, because the Father was not going to be in the presence of sin. This is spiritual separation, which is what spiritual death is. Death means separation. So, of course, Bible chronology also reveals that it's 4,000-year period until Christ came. And this is when he accomplished the redemption. And that was there in 30 AD. After that, we see the next period of time is the 2,000 years of the church age. And this is revealed in Exodus chapter 19. We see in verse 10, the Lord said to Moses, Moses is a type of Christ, go into the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow. That's 2 days. And let them, speaking to the people, wash their clothes, which means to wash them as white as like a fuller would wash them, as white as snow. Well, we see, he said, and be ready against the 3rd day. The 3rd day, the Lord will come down in the sight of all the people. So here, Moses, a type of Christ, goes to the people, he comes to us, comes to the people, and brings forth the sanctification, consecration, sanctification, dedication of the people for 2 days in the church age, and they are to wash themselves to be holy and clean, white as snow, and be ready against the 3rd day. And when it says be ready, this is a word which means to be firm, to be stable, to be established. It's like what we see in the word sterizo, be firm, be stable, be established. That's what we're to be set in the things of the Word of God for the 3rd day. And the 3rd day coming, that's the day it says the Lord will come down in the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai. So this is the 2 days talking about what happens in the church age over that 2,000 years. There's another reference to the 2 days, and that's over in Hosea. In Hosea, we see over here in chapter 6 another reference in verse 2 where it says after 2 days. This is also speaking of the 2 days of the church age, but this is not talking about during it, which is what Exodus 19 was talking about. This is now talking about after the 2 days, so that would be after the 2,000 years is over. We go back a verse and we see this is talking about the Jews. He says, come, let us return unto the Lord, for he hath torn, that was the judgments that came upon them, and he will heal us. He's going to come and restore us. He has smitten, judgments came because of their rebellion, but he will bind us up. Meaning that these ones who had been rebellious for all these years, they're going to see a restoration from God. When's this going to happen? After 2 days. After the 2 days of the church age, the 2,000 years, so that would be after the 4,000 plus the 2, after the 6,000 years, he's going to revive us. When? In the 3rd day, he will raise us up. Well, that's when they are going to get born again, when they receive the gospel. And we shall live in his sight. Notice this is after the 2 days, and that is the time of God's final dealings with the Jews. Remember the 70 weeks prophecy? 69 weeks were till Messiah, and then he ministered to them for 3.5 years. They did not receive the gospel. They killed him. And so 69 and a half years had elapsed of his ministry to them. Half of a week left, which is 3.5 years. And that 3.5 years is now this time after the 2 days when he's going to minister to them. And this parallels the time of the tribulation, which is 3.5 years as well. In fact, we see what's going to happen. The Jews are going to finally come to the place of receiving the gospel and be saved. It's prophesied, declared in Romans 11:26. And so Israel shall be saved. All Israel shall be saved, as it's written. There shall come out of Zion the deliverer and turn away the ungodliness from Jacob. They're going to come to the place of repentance. This is my covenant with them when I shall take away, or when I might take away. This is a subjunctive mood verb, meaning it's a conditional statement. When I might take away their sins, meaning they'd have to meet the conditions. And the conditions would be, of course, to receive Jesus and then to turn away from all their ungodliness and all their sinful ways and come to the place of being right with the Lord. Well, we see how this is going to happen, because once they hear the gospel and they get born again during the tribulation period, as we see from verse 2, that he's going to raise them up and they're going to live in his sight, we come to verse 3. Then shall we know, if we follow on, or this means to pursue and run after, to know the Lord, his going forth is prepared as the morning, at the dawn, the beginning of that day. He shall come unto us as the rain, as the latter and the former rain unto the earth. This is the rain that is going to bring the maturing. It brings the maturing of the crops. That means there's going to be a tremendous outpouring upon them of the rain. And what's the rain? The rain is the Word of God that is going to bring revelation to them. And they are going to grow up in the things of God. And they're going to come to the place of maturity quickly. The reason is because we see in Romans chapter 9, it speaks in verse 27. Isaiah also cries concerning Israel, though the number of the children of Israel be as the sand of the sea, a remnant shall be saved. Only the ones at the very end, those are the ones who are going to receive the gospel. All the rest of them have rebelled all along, and they haven't been saved. For he will finish the work and cut it short in righteousness. This means it's going to be expedited. It's going to be executed and finished quickly and expedited. It's going to be a quick work, because a short work will the Lord make upon the earth. It's going to be a quick work in reaching them to bring them to the place of growing up into the things of God. And this is going to happen over the 3.5 years. The 3.5 years, they are going to come to that place. So, we see the 4,000 years were to Christ, the 2,000 years were the church age, and after that's when, parallel the tribulation, that's when the Jews are going to get saved. Now, another thing we must realize at the end of the church age, the 6,000 years, that also is the end of the time of man's rule on earth, which was 6,000-year lease, as you will see. We see the fact that in Psalms 115, Psalms 115, it declares in verse 16, the heaven, even the heavens are the Lord's. They belong to him. But the earth has he given to the children or the sons of men. He gave it into their hands, not forever, but as a lease, as you will see, for a period of time. And this period of time, as you will see, is 6,000 years. So when Adam rebelled against God, not only did he die spiritually immediately, but he also gave that authority into the hands of Satan. This is evident when in the temptation in Luke chapter 4, verse 6, the devil speaking to Jesus said, the devil said unto him, all this power, the word exousia, which means authority, all this authority will I give thee, when he was tempting him about giving him the authority over all these kingdoms of the world, and the glory of them, for that is delivered unto me. It's been given unto me. And to whomsoever I will, I give it. course, this is a lying temptation. He wasn't going to give it at all. He was just trying to get Jesus to submit to that. Of course, did Jesus dispute this? No, not at all, because this is what was the truth. Of course, he said, here's the real temptation. If thou therefore will worship me, all shall be thine. And Jesus, of course, dealt with the temptation. Tell him to get behind me, Satan, for it's written, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. But he did not dispute the fact that he had the authority over the earth. And he had the authority over the earth because it was transferred into his hands at the fall, because man had it, and now he gave it into the hands of Satan. And this is for 6,000 years. The reason we can see this, we actually can see this revelation that it was revealed the 6,000-year period right before the flood. In Genesis chapter 6, we see what God knew, we see what God saw, and we see what God decided to do when he brought the judgment upon the people who were in wickedness. We see what he saw in verse 5. God saw the wickedness of man that was great in the earth, and every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. He was wicked. And it repented the Lord that he made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. So after he saw that, then we see what he decided to do. The Lord said, I will destroy man, whom I've created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. So we see what he saw, the wickedness, and what he decided to do to bring the judgment and destroy everything. But there's another thing that we see is what he knew. And this comes back to verse 3. Genesis chapter 6, verse 3, the Lord said, the King James says this, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. This is not a good translation whatsoever. Young's does a better job, but not entirely. He brings out, my spirit doth not strive or contend, this means, with man. And he brings out that it's to the age, which is correct in the Hebrew. When we talk about then to the age, we'll comment on this in a moment, but this is to the age when man would not have dominion over the earth any longer. He's having to deal with them while he's in that state, which was given into the hands of Satan, and man was now spiritually dead at this point. He says, in their erring, they are flesh. That is not a good translation because it's not plural. We'll point that out in a moment. We'll look at this, and the way we can bring this to you is by looking at the Hebrew. And this is the Westminster Hebrew morphology of the Old Testament. And we see down here when it speaks of about to, this is the word here that's a preposition to, and it's talking about, this is the word that can be a long duration or also means age, to the age. That's why Young's translates it that way correctly. And it speaks about in his erring, this is the word for erring, having been committed sin, error, and gone astray. It speaks of the fact that flesh, I want you to notice, is singular. And then when we see, this is the noun form over here. This is also singular. It's a pronoun. What it's saying, if we go back up to see what it's saying, he's not saying in their erring, their flesh. He's saying in his erring, he is flesh, because it's singular. It's not plural whatsoever. What's it talking about? It's not talking about mankind in general. It's talking about Adam's. In Adam's erring, singular, talking about one person, he's flesh. That what happened to Adam? He died spiritually immediately. He no longer was spiritually alive unto God. So now what was he? All he was just in the flesh. This is a revelation declaring that in his, Adam's, erring or going astray and sinning, he's now flesh. He's not right with God anymore. He's not spiritually alive anymore. And he's talking about why he's not going to deal with man and strive with him to the age, because now the state that he's in, he's spiritually dead, and now he's just flesh. And then he makes the statement, his days have been 120 years, or shall be, is the way it should be understood. What's the 120 years he's talking about? This is in relation to the fact that he's not going to contend with man to the age. So he's talking about this period of time to the age. The 120 years is the period of time to the age. So what's that referring to? Is that referring to the man's span of life? No. How do we know? Because after the flood, we look over here in Genesis chapter 25, verse 7. These are the days of the years of Abraham's life which he lived, and he lived 115 years. That's 175 years. Well, that means man's life was not limited to 120, because he lived more than that. Here's another case talking about Ishmael. The years of the life of Ishmael, 137. He lived to 137. How about Isaac? Genesis 35, verse 28. The days of Isaac were 104 score. That's 180 years. All these were living beyond that time. And then we see with Jacob. How about Jacob? This is all after the flood. Genesis 47, verse 28. Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the whole age of Jacob was 147. Every one of these are more than 120. So, is the 120 having anything to do about the lifespan of man? The answer is no. So what's it talking about? It's talking about 120 jubilee years, according to God's reckoning. Every 50 years was considered a period, a jubilee year period. And so 120 times 50 is 6,000, which is the time that man had to rule on the earth. That is what he's talking about, the 6,000 years of man's rule. In the context, remember, he's saying, my spirit shall not always be contending with man to the age. In his erring, he died spiritually, now he's flesh. So the days that I have to deal with him to the age is going to be 120 times 50, which would be the 6,000 years. That is what it's speaking about. That's how long he had authority to rule in the earth, and God would have to deal with him. And because of that, when he saw all the wickedness, he decided, I'm going to destroy this character and all of them. I'm going to destroy the whole bunch, wipe it all out. So, this is the time that we see, and we can even see what the Jubilee is all about if we look back over in Leviticus chapter 25. Leviticus chapter 25, verse 9 says, Thou shalt cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month. In the day of atonement shall you make the trumpet sound throughout all your land. You shall hallow the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and you shall return every man unto his possession, and you shall return every man unto his family. This is every 50 years, the reminder of the restoration of all things that was going to happen. They were going to be restored back to their possessions and returned back to their family, pointing towards what God was going to do for man to restore him back to relationship with God and restore his possessions that had been taken now by the devil because of his sin. In fact, we even see Jesus' ministry started on this very day, the Day of Atonement, the 7th month, the 10th day. And what was he doing? The fact that he started at that time, he was bringing forth the revelation of what his ministry was, to bring restoration to man and to bring him to the place, of course, the ultimate reconciliation of all things. He said in Luke 4:18, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He's anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor, sent me to heal the brokenhearted, preach deliverance to the captives, recovering the sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised. And when did he do this? To preach the acceptable year of the Lord, which was the year of Jubilee, when they would get set free from all of their bondages. And this is all in fulfillment of, in Isaiah chapter 61, where this comes from. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord hath anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek, sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, proclaim liberty to the captives, open the prison to them that are bound, and to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. That's what Jesus did in his first coming, and that's where Jesus stopped, about the restoration that was going to come. And he's proclaiming the fact that the Jubilee, I am the Jubilee, coming to bring liberty to man and bring restoration. But then there's another part, and this is the part that Jesus will fulfill in the end, and this is the day of the vengeance of our God, which is the judgment that comes on the nations, and he is going to accomplish that. That's the final fulfillment here, this day of vengeance of our God, of what the Jubilee is all about. And when is that going to be able to happen? After all these Jubilees are over, which is 120 Jubilees, which is the 6,000 years, which is the 6,000-year reign of mankind. We can also see this 6,000-year period as far as the 6 days also shown when we look at Matthew chapter 17. It says after 6 days, not at 6 days. 6 days is a type of the 1,000 years, 6,000-year period. So after the 6,000 years, what did Jesus do? He took Peter, James, and John, his brother, and brought them up on the high mountain apart. He didn't bring all the disciples. He only brought the 3 that were the closest ones. They were the real disciples, pointing towards who are the ones that are going to be with Jesus when the rapture occurs. It's the real disciples, because this is speaking of that, because he was transfigured into and before them. His face did shine as the sun. His raiment was white as light. This is a type of the rapture occurring. And when is that pointing it's going to happen? After the 6 days. It's going to happen during the 7th-day period, which is at the end of the tribulation period, as we pointed out. Notice also, behold, there appeared unto them Moses and Elias talking with him. Where is he actually there talking to them? No. Tell you why in a moment. Peter answered and said, Lord, is it good for us here if thou wilt you make the 3 tabernacles, one for thee, one for Moses, one for Elias? That also tells you the time of when this was occurring. It was at the time of tabernacles, which is the 7th month period at the end. In general, it's referred to, that's the time when the rapture of the church will occur, in the beginning of the tabernacle period, which is the fulfillment of the Feast of Trumpets. And why is it Moses and Elias? Was it actually them appearing? No, because verse 9, later he charged them saying, tell the vision to no man. It was a vision. But why was it about Moses and Elias? Because it speaks of those who are going to be in the rapture. Moses is the one who died, and it is pointing towards all those who are dead in Christ, who come from heaven with Jesus. Elijah was the one who didn't die, and this speaks of those who have not died, that are still alive and remain, that are going to be caught up to meet the Lord in the air. This refers to the dead in Christ, and this refers to the alive in Christ at the very end, that are going to be caught up to meet the Lord in the air. So, this is also a revelation of this after the 6,000 years. And why is it after that? Because that's when the rapture could occur. It couldn't occur prior to that, as people have been continually saying the imminent return of Jesus has been a lying teaching forever. It only happens at a specific time, and it couldn't happen until after the 6,000-year period was done, because of the fact that Adam had given that authority into Satan's hand, and he could rule and reign during that time. And further, there were many things that had to be accomplished before the rapture could occur. Now, there's another point we need to bring out, is that the 6,000-year period of rule was a lease. And this is important to see. Luke chapter 20, verse 9 and following brings revelation about this. Then he began to speak to the people this parable. In this parable, we see some important things to understand. A certain man planted a vineyard and led it forth to husband and went to a far country for a long time. Man now is in the earth, and God is now back in heaven for a long time. During that time, what all happened? At the season, he sent a servant to the husband that they should give him of the fruit of the vineyard, but the husband beat him and sent him away empty. He sent another servant. They beat him and treated him shamefully and sent him away empty. Again, he sent a third. They wounded him also and cast him out. That's what they did with all the prophets that came. They killed them off or sent them out, rejected everything that they brought forth. Then the Lord of the vineyard, what shall I do? He says in the parable here, I will send my beloved son. Well, that's a type of Jesus now coming, being sent. It may be that they will reverence him when they see him. Were the Jews going to reverence him? No. But you also have to understand who is driving the Jews who rebelled against the things of God. It's the devil who was operating through them to do the evil things. Look what it says in verse 14. Very important. When the husbandmen saw him, they reasoned among themselves, saying, this is the heir. Come, let us kill him, that the inheritance may be ours. Quite a statement. They thought that the son was the heir, referring to Jesus as the heir. And so they say, come, let's kill him. And of course, the devils inspired the Jews to kill Jesus, which is what they did. But look at the motivation of why they did it. Remember, Satan had the lease for 6,000 years. But after the 6,000 years was over, what was he going to do? It'd be over. But he says that the inheritance may be ours. They thought Jesus, who had the control of the earth and the owner of the earth, he was the heir. And so they thought if they killed him, the inheritance of the earth will be ours. It won't just be for a lease period. We'll have it forever. That's why they killed him. They thought that the inheritance would be theirs. And you have to understand the inheritance includes the earth, because it says so in Matthew 5:5. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Part of the inheritance was the earth. So in this parable, the devil thought that killing Jesus would capture the inheritance of the earth, so the devil would own it, and he wouldn't just have it for a lease for 6,000 years only. He'd have it forever, and he'd capture this. He was wrong. He didn't know what was going on, because the killing of Jesus was what was necessary in order for him to accomplish all the things that were necessary, which you will see as we go forth. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 6 speaks something important and following. Howbeit we speak wisdom among them that are perfect, or the perfect ones, the perfected ones. That's us. We're becoming and being perfected, and revelation comes to us. Yet not the wisdom of this age, aeon, nor of the rulers. Princes mean, archon means the rulers, translated rulers most of the time, the rulers of this age. So it's not according to the wisdom of this age or the rulers of this age. And who are they? That's the evil spirits under Satan that have been ruling, that come to naught, or are coming to the place of naught, being nothing, being destroyed, being eliminated from their operation, which is, of course, that's what brought to nothing and brought to being useless. But at that time they had authority, remember. We speak the wisdom of God in a mystery. This wisdom was a mystery. Even the hidden wisdom, which God ordained before the age, not world, aeon, unto our glory. So there was wisdom that God had from the very beginning, and Satan and his evil spirits, all these rulers of the age, did not know it. They didn't understand this whatsoever. Look at verse 8. Which none of the rulers, again, of this age, aeon, knew. For had they known it, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. They thought they were going to get the inheritance of the earth. They were wrong. But that's what they thought. But they didn't have the wisdom. Otherwise, there'd be no reason to kill him if it wasn't going to be successful. They would never have crucified him if they would have known this. But of course, they did not know this. Now, so we see that there's a 6,000-year lease. Remember, at the end of that time, Satan was not going to have authority anymore. What's he going to do? Well, he's going to have to do something. So that's why he killed him, thought he was going to get the earth. What's going to happen now, though, at the end of the 6,000 years? The lease will not be in his hands any longer. Jesus is going to begin the process of eliminating the devil and his evil spirits from their operation in heaven, in the heavens, and in the earth, and bring judgment, as you will see, on all those who rejected him, and bring judgment, the righteous judgment of God, upon all those who have walked contrary to his ways. We see this shown forth in Romans chapter 1, verse 18. The wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men. It's going to happen. The wrath is going to come upon them all. Chapter 2, verse 5. After thy hardness and impenitent heart, unrepentant heart, they're treasuring up, which means they're collecting up unto thyself wrath against the day of wrath and revelation of the righteous judgment of God. Anybody who has hardness of heart, anybody who's not repented in their heart, wrath's coming on them because they're not right with God. It doesn't matter whether they're born again or what they are. The righteous judge, that's why everybody has got to be right before the Lord. He's going to render every man according to his deeds, see? But those who by steadfastness in doing right, doing well, works, good work means literally, are seeking for glory, honor, immortality, and eternal life. But those who are contentious and do not obey the truth, the ones that are walking in unrighteousness, ungodliness, disobedience, but obey unrighteousness, what's going to happen to them? Indignation and wrath, tribulation and anguish. They're going to see destruction and judgment coming upon them. We also see, it speaks in 1 Thessalonians 1:10. We go back a verse, it talks about how these ones that turn to God from idols to serve the true and living God and to wait for his Son from heaven, talking about when he comes, which is going to be after the 6,000 years and in the seventh day when he's going to come, whom he raised from the dead, even Jesus. And this one is a verse that many people who try to claim that there's no way Christians going to have wrath, they try to claim this verse, which delivered us from the wrath to come. He already delivered us. No. Delivered is not a past tense verb. It is a present tense verb. Who is delivering us or rescuing us, as Young's brings out, from the wrath that is coming. Present tense participle, as he brings out. Otherwise, he's the one who will deliver us from that wrath that's coming if we meet the conditions. And what are we to do? He later says this, or what they're supposed to do in verse 9 of chapter 5. God has not appointed us to wrath. He didn't want anybody to have wrath, but it doesn't mean you're not going to have it if you're not right with God. But to obtain salvation by our Lord Jesus Christ. How would we escape wrath? If we obtain salvation. That's how. Suppose we're not walking right and obtaining salvation. We would get wrath, even though God has not appointed us to wrath. He does not want us to have wrath whatsoever. Now, this wrath is going to begin being poured out on the beginning of the seventh day for the 3.5 years of the tribulation period. Now, we got many things that we need to see. We saw in Revelation 4, he was going to be shown all these things hereafter, in verse 1, which we'll look later at. And chapter 5, we saw in Revelation, verse 1, about how there was this book that was open that was written on the backside and on the inside and the outside. We need to understand this because this has to do with what Jesus is doing, because that is the title deed to the earth that he's going to be opening up, which is the necessity for him to be able to do that, and then to bring the judgments that will come forth. And you'll see the judgments must come forth because they're all part of the redemption process. In order to see this, we got to go back to Jeremiah chapter 32. In Jeremiah chapter 32, we see in verse 6, Jeremiah said, "The word of the Lord came unto me." God speaking to him is something that he was going to do. He says, "Behold, Hanamiel." Hanamiel means God is gracious. The gracious God who's going to do something about the situation. The son of Shalom. Now, this is the word which means retribution. What does retribution mean? That is one who pays back the punishment for evil. The gracious God, the son of the one who pays back the punishment for evil, which is what God is going to do in the tribulation period in bringing the righteous judgment. He's going to come unto thee, saying, "Buy thee my field that's in Anathoth, for the right of redemption is thine to buy it." Now, when it speaks about Anathoth, this is the place where Jeremiah was from, and we see over in Jeremiah 29, verse 27, it says, "Now therefore why hast thou not reproved Jeremiah of Anathoth?" Anathoth means affliction. So this is talking about Jeremiah, who's from the place of affliction. And we go over to Isaiah, and it speaks again about this in chapter 10, in verse 30, where he says, "Lift up thy voice, O daughter of Galem, cause it to be heard unto Laish, O poor Anathoth," afflicted Anathoth. So the place that he's talking about, Anathoth, means affliction. We go back to Jeremiah now, chapter 32. And so we're in verse 7. He says, "You're going to buy my field," which would be the land, "that is in affliction." So there's some land that's in affliction that has to be purchased. And this is all a part of, as we saw, the retribution, the paying back for evil, which is part of what redemption accomplishes. Because he goes on and he says that the reason is because the right of redemption is thine to buy it. So, God is declaring, he's appointed Jeremiah now, and he's the type of what Jesus is going to do, that here, this field that's in affliction, he has the right of redemption to come and to buy it, and he is to purchase this thing and buy it. And he's the one, God is the one who's paying back the punishment for evil. And why is it, of course, in affliction? Because of sin, because of the fall of man and all the evil that has occurred. Verse 8. "So Hanamiel, the gracious God, mine uncle's son, came to me in the court of the prison." Jeremiah is in prison because he's a type of man being in prison. And he is imprisoned to spiritual death state, imprisoned to being a sinner, imprisoned under the devil. His destination at the time he would die would be hell, where man went to. He's in the court of the prison, according to the word of God. And what's he say to him? He says, buy my field, this is this land, I pray thee, that's in Anathoth, in affliction. And where is this? Talking about this. It's in the country. The word country is the word eretz, which means the earth. The earth. Of who? Benjamin. Well, what does Benjamin mean? The son of my right hand. Who's the son of thy right hand? God doing the speaking. It's Jesus. So this is speaking here. He's saying, you're going to buy this land that's in affliction, which is the earth that belongs to the son of the right hand, Jesus. And he says why he's going to be able to do it. Because not the right, but really it's a right. There's no definite article in the Hebrew. A right of inheritance, the right of inheritance is thine, and redemption is thine. It's back in the verse before when it said a. There's no definite article for the right of redemption. It's a right of redemption. In fact, it's interesting that the Tanakh, this is the Tanakh, which is from the Jewish Publications Society that did a production in 1985. He says, buy my land in Anathoth, for you're next in succession to redeem it by purchase, which is actually what it's really implying here. The reason is because somebody else had the right of redemption first, but he had a right of redemption, as you will see. So he speaks here, you're going to buy this place that's in affliction, which is the earth, which belongs to the son of the right hand. It belongs to the Lord, it belongs to Jesus. You got the right of inheritance is thine, and redemption, same thing, right of redemption is thine. Two things that had to happen, the redemption and also the inheritance rights that had to be fulfilled and carried out in order to be able to do it. Buy it for thyself. So, we come to verse 9. I bought the field of Hanamiel, my uncle's son, that was in Anathoth, affliction, weighed in the money, even 17 shekels of silver. Now, when we talk about this 17 shekels of silver, 17 in Scripture is the number of the beginning of judgment and of reversing the curse upon the earth, and also beginning, exposing, and stopping evil in the earth. We'll show you this. Genesis chapter 7, verse 11. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, in the 17th day of the month, 17 is the number of the beginning of judgment being released. The same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up and the windows of heaven were opened, the flood began. The beginning of the judgment that came. It was on the 17th day. And then, in chapter 8, verse 4, and the ark rested in the 7th month, on the 17th day, the 7th month, remember we've talked about this in the past prophetically, that is Tishri, that's the time of the second coming of Jesus Christ. And this is all pointing towards the judgment time when this is all going to end, when after he accomplishes the great judgment. But notice what he said. The ark rested in the 7th month on the 17th day again, meaning that was the ending of it. And notice what it says. It's on the mountains of Ararat. What does Ararat mean? It means the curse reversed. Jesus was going to reverse the curse on the earth. He is going to accomplish the redemption. He's going to fulfill that right of redemption and the right of inheritance to take back the earth and reverse the curse. 17 is that number of reversing the curse and stopping the evil, ending and destroying the evil. We can even see this again in Genesis 37, verse 2. These are the generations of Jacob, Joseph being 17 years old. You see 17, your ears prick up, and you say, what's going on here now? He was feeding the flock with his brethren. The lad was with the sons of Bilhah, with the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. Now, they were doing evil, and he's the only one that came and told them the truth of what these guys were doing. So what did he do? He exposed the evil. 17, remember, is the number that's going to end the evil. So he was exposing the evil as one who was 17 years old. We see another place about the 17 showing the ending of evil. In Genesis 47:28, Jacob lived in the land of Egypt. That was the place of bondage, 17 years. And then that was it. That was the end. So the whole age, he was 147 years. So 17 years in the evil land, and then it was cut off. The end of him dwelling in a place that was evil. We even see in the reign of the kings this brought forth. 1 Kings chapter 14. We pick up in verse 21. Rehoboam, son of Solomon, reigned in Judah. Rehoboam was 41 years. He began to reign. He reigned 17 years in Jerusalem, city which the Lord did choose out of all the tribes of Israel to put his name there. His mother's name was Naamah of the Ammonites. And Judah, he was ruling and over Judah, did evil in the sight of the Lord, provoked him to jealousy with their sins they committed above all that their fathers had done. They did all this evil, and how long was it? 17 years until it stopped. They stopped after 17 years of his rule. We see another place in 2 Kings chapter 13. In the 23rd year of Joash, the son of Ahaziah, the king of Judah, Joahaz, the son of Jehu, began to reign over Israel and Samaria, and he reigned 17 years. Well, you know what kind of guy he was. He was evil. He did that was evil in the sight of the Lord. Again. And it was only for 17 years, and that was it. You weren't going to reign more than the 17 years. So the 17, as we see, going back to Jeremiah chapter 32, now in verse 9, he bought the field for 17 shekels to end which is the number of ending the evil and reversing the curse upon the earth. Now, in doing so, what was happening here? There was a deed of purchase that was occurring. Because remember, he's purchasing that which is in affliction, which is in the country of Benjamin, all type of the earth that's in affliction, that's owned by the Lord, the Son of the right hand, Jesus, who has the right of redemption and the right of inheritance that he's got to fulfill in order to see this earth be taken back from the affliction. So, he subscribed the evidence. This means it was written. The word means written in a book. Actually, this is the word sefer, which means book. And sealed it and took witnesses, weighed him the money in the balances. And you see in the next verse, it's a deed of purchase. I took the evidence, or the book of the purchase, both that which was sealed according to the law and custom, and that which was open. There was the sealed part inside, and there's the part that was open on the outside. That is a deed of purchase. It's written on the inside and written on the outside. He gave the evidence, the book of the purchase, unto Barak, the son of Neriah, the son of Messiah, the sight of Hananiel, my uncle's son, in the presence of the witnesses, subscribed the book of the purchase before all the Jews that sat in the court of the prison. They're all in prison, man in prison. And he charged them, and he said here that take these evidences, the book, this evidence of the purchase, which is both sealed, which is sealed, and this evidence which is open, and put them in an earthen vessel, that they may continue many days. Otherwise, this is going to be locked up in a vessel for a long time, for many days. And that's exactly what happened. It was the title deed to the earth that he was repurchasing, that to take back the control of the earth. Now, Because of this now, remember one thing we want to go back to look at for a moment so you understand. This is Hanamiel, the son of the one who's bringing the retribution. God is bringing retribution, which is the paying back of the punishment for evil upon all those ones that have done evil. And the way this is going to be accomplished is by buying the earth in affliction by the one who will have the right of redemption and the right of inheritance that he has to fulfill, who is Jesus. It was required for him to meet these conditions in order to see this. So we see two important things here. We got the right of redemption, and we see the right of the possession of inheritance. That means that Jesus had to get both of these. He had to fulfill both of these to see it be accomplished. So, when we talk about redemption, there were three rights of the Redeemer. One was to ransom his kinsman from bondage to a foreigner by paying a ransom price. He would buy man who had given himself away or had been into bondage. He'd buy him away by exchange of ownership, and he'd repurchase him, and now he owned him. The second was to avenge the death of the kinsman redeemer, the kinsman. The redeemer is going to redeem the kinsman. To avenge the death of the kinsman because of the adversary, which means to defeat the adversary, who is the devil, and all of his works, all the things that he accomplished through what happened. And then the third was to purchase back the forfeited inheritance for a kinsman who sold or gave his land or himself to another. That's the taking back of the earth. And that's exactly what Jesus was going to do, what it's pointing towards, as the Redeemer. To see this, we go over to Leviticus chapter 25. And we pick up in verse 47. If a sojourner or stranger was waxed rich by thee, and thy brother that dwelleth by him is poor, and he selleth himself unto the stranger or sojourner by thee, or to the stock of the stranger's family, he sold himself. That's exactly what happened. Adam sold himself into the hands of the devil. After he's sold, he may be redeemed again. This is the law. God does everything according to spiritual law. He may be redeemed again. One of his brethren, someone who would be a kinsman, may redeem him. Either his uncle or his uncle's son may redeem him, or any that is nigh of kin unto him, of his family, may redeem him. Or if he's able, he may redeem himself, if he could do it. Now, of course, man couldn't redeem himself because he was already in the bondage of Satan and spiritual death and in prison, and he couldn't get himself out of that at all. But mankind in general was first in line in succession as a kinsman redeemer. Now, could mankind redeem himself? No, he couldn't do it. Because the requirement was not only to purchase the land, but they also had to purchase the person and restore him back. Well, that wasn't possible for man to be able to do it. We know this from over in Psalms 49, verse 7. None of them can by any means redeem his brother who's in the affliction he's in, nor give to God a ransom for him. Man couldn't do it. Man couldn't give a ransom. He couldn't redeem anybody who was in that state of now being sold, being in bondage to another. And then we see another thing. That means man cannot redeem himself. So it had to be someone else who's going to do it. Isaiah 52 verse 3 says, "For thus saith the Lord, you have sold yourselves for naught into the hands of Satan, and you shall be redeemed without money." It's not going to be by buying, which is what they did in the Old Testament. We buy the land or buy, to redeem someone's land or buy this person back. No, it's not going to be with money whatsoever. Now, We also see that in this buying back of redemption, which is shown in Ruth. Ruth is all about redemption. In Ruth chapter 4, verse 5, this is Boaz, type of Christ, who is going to redeem Ruth as a type of man in bondage. Then said Boaz, what day that thou buyest the field of the hand of Naomi, because he's buying the field, because Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, had died, and now he had to find someone who would be a kinsman redeemer who would buy it to restore it back for the family so the family name would continue on. Buyest the field of the hand of Naomi, thou must also buy not, this is a mistake here, in the way they wrote this in the King James. It's not there at all in the Hebrew. Notice what it says, must buy, look at the word it. It's italicized. It is not there whatsoever. We're not talking about buying the land here. You already said you're going to buy the field. Thou must buy also, not of, but you must buy also Ruth the Moabitess. You had to buy her, which is a marriage, which is exactly what happened. The wife of the dead, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance, because he'd buy her, he'd get married to her, he'd have a child to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance. The kinsman said, this is the nearest kinsman who's not mentioned his name, but what is it? It means man himself in general, mankind, could not accomplish the redemption. He says, I can't redeem it for myself. He couldn't do it. Lest I mar my own inheritance, redeem thou right to thyself, for I cannot redeem it. Man could not do it because he couldn't purchase her whatsoever. He didn't have the means to be able to do that. Verse 9, Boaz said to the elders and all the people, you're witnesses this day. I bought all that was Elimelech's, all that was Chilian's and Mahlon's. Those are the ones that they had married, that had died as well, of the hand of Naomi. Moreover, Ruth, the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, have I purchased to be my wife. That's part of redemption. He had to buy the one. Because Jesus had to buy us. We're purchased possession, remember, by the blood of Jesus. To raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance. Man was in a spiritual dead state. He had to purchase us, and he had to raise up the name of the one who's dead, so that now it would continue on. Man would not be spiritually dead forever, destined to hell. He would be alive again, and there'd be this inheritance now. He would become an heir, and the inheritance now would pass on, as you will see. That the name of the dead be not cut off from among his brethren, and from the gate of his place you are witnesses this day. So, he not only bought the land, but he also had to buy Ruth. And that's exactly what he did. Now, a man was involved in the fall. And man could not do anything to redeem himself, as we saw. And the nearest kinsman, which was man in general, couldn't do anything about it because he's already under the bondage of Satan. He couldn't pay any ransom price in order to do something. So who's left who could accomplish the redemption? Only God. But a man was involved in the fall, and a man had to be involved in the redemption because he had to become a kinsman redeemer according to spiritual law. He had to be a kin. So what does that mean? God had to become a man. And that's exactly what we see happen with Jesus. The second person of the Godhead, the Word. John 1:14, the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. God took upon himself flesh. And when we took upon flesh, you have to understand this is sinful flesh that had the ability to sin, because he was tempted in all points, yet without sin. Look what it says in Romans 8:3, for what the law could not do, and that was weak through the flesh, God sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh. He had to be in the same state man was in. He had sinful flesh. He had to walk the walk that Adam had failed. He's the second Adam who passed the test. And for sin, condemns sin in the flesh, which he accomplished this. So, man couldn't do it. So that means that a next kinsman, redeemer, could accomplish this, and it would have to be another man. So, who was that? That was Jesus. He was the next in line of succession, having the right of redemption. But it had to be given unto him. You see, that man in Ruth who had the right, he could have done it. In fact, he said he was going to redeem the land, but he couldn't buy Ruth. He couldn't do that one. And so he gave that right of redemption into the hands of Boaz, remember, which is a type of Jesus. So that means the nearer kinsman had to give the right of redemption to Jesus. How was that done? It was done by the high priest. In John chapter 18, in verse 14, he didn't realize prophetically what he was declaring. Caiaphas, who was the high priest, was he which gave counsel to the Jews that it was expedient that one man should die for the people. He's giving the right of redemption into the hands of Jesus, who would be the one who would die for the people, so that Jesus would be offered up as the final sacrifice for sins, which is what was necessary. Of course, to pay the price for redemption, someone had to die. And also, of course, this gave Jesus the right of redemption and the right for the exchange of ownership by purchasing the human race, which is what Jesus accomplished, which you'll see. So, remember, what did the devil do? The devil had the Jews killed Jesus thinking that they would possess the inheritance, remember? The inheritance will be ours. In Luke chapter 20, in the parable. So, what did Jesus do? Jesus laid down his life. He was obedient unto the death, of course. And what happened on the cross? Isaiah chapter 53, verse 6. All we like sheep have gone astray. We turned everyone to his own way, and the Lord hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. All of the sin of mankind was laid upon him. When it was laid upon him, he's now made sin. Well, what happens if sin is laid upon you? You're not right with God anymore. That's why when he was made sin, in verse 45 of Matthew 27, when darkness was over all the land, that meant Jesus was the light. He wasn't light anymore. Now darkness was upon him because he was made sin. It was on everything. And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani? That is to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Up to this time, he always referred to him as the Father. He's not the Father anymore because he's separated from the Father. Spiritual separation, which is what death is, spiritual death. Death is not ceasing to exist. It is spiritual separation. Just like when you die physically, you don't cease to exist, you're just separated from your body. Well, what was this? This is spiritual separation from God, the Father. He's now just God to him. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? The Father left him. Jesus now has become like Jeremiah, who was in prison, remember. When he was in prison, he was going to buy this thing. Jesus had to come into the same place that Jeremiah was in prison, which would mean he's in a spiritually dead state like man to be able to pay the price, and that's exactly what he's like there. He's in a spiritually dead state, having been made sin. The Father having left him, separated from the Father. There were two deaths that occurred, revealed in Leviticus 16. There wasn't just a physical death only. Leviticus 16:5, he took of the congregation of the children of Israel 2 kids of the goats for a sin offering. Jesus was the a sin offering, but there were 2 goats. The 2 goats we see in verse 8. He cast lots upon the 2 goats, one lot for the Lord and the other was a scapegoat. He brings the goat upon which the Lord's lot fell and offered him for the sin offering. That's Jesus dying and his blood being shed physically. The goat on which the lot fell to be the scapegoat shall be presented alive before the Lord to make an atonement with him, and let him go for a scapegoat in the wilderness. That's Jesus' spirit and soul being sent down into the spiritual wilderness of hell with all of the iniquities laid upon him. You'll see this in a moment. Verse 15, you kill the goat of the sin offering by the people, bring the blood within the veil, do that with the blood did with the blood of the bullock, sprinkle upon the mercy seat and before the mercy seat. He's the final sacrifice for sin. The redemptive price has been paid. The ransom has been paid for man's sin. Verse 21. Aaron will lay hands on the head of the live goat. This is the second goat. Confess over him all the iniquities of the children of Israel and all their transgressions and their sins. Put him upon the head of the goat. Send him away by the hand of a fit man into the wilderness. And the goat shall bear upon him all the iniquities unto a land not inhabited. Well, where's that? That's down in hell for 3 days and 3 nights, down in the lowest pit where Jesus went. The goat was bearing away the iniquities for those 3 days and 3 nights. Remember that Jesus first went down before he went up. We know this from Ephesians chapter 4, verse 9. Now that he ascended, what is it but that he also descended first in time into the lower parts of the earth? He went down to hell immediately in order to pay the price. But there were more things, as you'll see. Acts chapter 2, verse 24. Whom God raised up, having loosed the pains of death. He was in the lowest pit where he was suffering the pains of death, the torment, because it was not possible that he should be holden of it. Why? Because he never sinned himself. They had no right to take him there. It was all of our sins laid upon him. And what happened to him after he had paid that price? He was born again. Remember, he was spiritually dead, separated from the Father when he went down, like Jeremiah in prison. Acts 13:33, God has fulfilled the same unto us their children, in that he raised up Jesus again. By the way, there's no again here. I don't know why they stuck it in there. It means this, did he raised up Jesus as he brought. He hadn't been raised up before. This is the first time he was raised up. Shouldn't be in there. It's deceptive. As it is also written in the second psalm, thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee. That means born you. This is when Jesus was born from spiritual death unto spiritual life. And when he was born, what happened to him? Remember, his spirit was not right because he'd been separated from the Father and all the sin had been laid upon him. That meant Jesus had to get a new spirit. And he did. Because it says in Revelation 1:5, from Jesus Christ, the faithful witness, who's the first begotten. That means the firstborn. Out of, literally, out of the dead, or out from the dead. And by the way, dead doesn't mean the dead state. This word is plural. Here's the word dead. Necron. Plural. It's an adjective. Talk about the dead ones. Who are they? All the ones that were spiritually dead down there in hell. So he's the firstborn out of all the dead, spiritually dead people who were down in hell. Well, what does that mean? He got born again. He was a firstborn. He got a brand new spirit. And this is all important because he had to accomplish this in order to bring man back to be alive unto God and to bring forth this new creation that had to happen. See, man was spiritually in a dead state. Hebrews 1:5. Unto which of the angels said he at any time, thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee or born thee? And again, here it does mean again this time, I will be to him a father. What does that mean? He was a father to him before, And now he says, again, I'm going to be a father to you. A second time. Because he had been separated from him before, when he was made sin on the cross. Again, I'll be to him a father, and thou shalt be to me a son. That's right. That's what happened when he got born, the firstborn, in hell. And again, when he bringeth in the first begotten into the world. And this is talking about the firstborn. First begotten is firstborn. And when it says into the world, that's not talking about when Jesus came initially. This is when he came up out of hell. And when it says world, it's not a good translation. It's not cosmos. It's the word okomene, which means the inhabited earth. Where did he come back from? He was down in hell. And now he's come up to the inhabited earth. Because he's now accomplished the redemption. And he is the firstborn from the dead. And what did he accomplish? He brought the new creation, which had to happen. Colossians 1:15, who's the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation would be a better way to translate this, as Young's brings out. There had to be a new creation because man was spiritually dead. Man couldn't do anything about it. But God had to become a man, and he had to die himself and be in the same state that man was to pay the price. And then God in Christ had to be a firstborn, born from spiritual death to spiritual life, which he was. And he's the firstborn of all creation, because everybody who receives Jesus after that becomes what? A new creation, born from above. And we are part of the church of firstborns. That's the church, remember, in Hebrews chapter 12 it speaks of. So, you got to understand what Jesus did. In going to the cross and going down to hell, of course, what was he? He was the sacrifice for sins. By this man, after he had offered one sacrifice for sins forever, he did it. It was done. He accomplished the redemption price being paid, sat down on the right hand of God. And he redeemed us. And how did he redeem us? We know from 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 18, you weren't redeemed with corruptible things, the silver and gold. That's what they used to buy everything. That's why he says, you're not going to be redeemed with money. No. Your vain conversation received by the tradition of your fathers, but with the precious blood of Jesus. He had to pay the price with his life, by his blood being poured out as a lamb without blemish and without spot. And what else happened? In doing so, though, in paying, he not only was paying the price for sin, but he, just like what Boaz was doing with Ruth, he purchased her, he also purchased us. Look what he says, how he made them overseers to feed the church of God, which he hath purchased with his own blood. That's why you're bought with a price and you're not your own. You can't live your own life or you're in rebellion to God. You got to live your life unto him. You're a purchased possession. We're bought with a price. Glorify God in everything that you do. Understand all these things. What else did he do? Remember the second part was he had to go down and he had to avenge the enemy, Satan, and all of his works. Well, how was Jesus going to do this? He also had to go do this through the avenue of death. Hebrews 2:14. For as much then as the children are partakers of flesh and blood, he also himself likewise took part of the same, that through death he might destroy him that had the power of death, that is the devil. And he did. And deliver them who through fear of death, why do they have fear of death? Because when you die, where are you going? To hell for eternity, unless somebody does something about it. We're all their lifetime subject to slavery. Bondage is a nice word to say, but it's slavery in the condition of a slave of Satan under spiritual death. No life, no freedom whatsoever. See? What did Jesus do, of course? He went down and got to him and took back the keys of hell and death, as he declares in Revelation 1:18. I am he that liveth, was dead, I died. And behold, I'm alive forevermore. I'm a firstborn. Amen. And have the keys of hell and of death, where man used to have to go, no longer.
Hallelujah.
The keys of hell and death are taken away. Man's not going to have to go there any longer. And the judgment also was declared on what's going to happen for the devil, because it says in John 16:11, when he's convicted of three things, of sin and of righteousness and of judgment because the ruler, archon, of this world, it has been judged. Literally what it says, because this is a perfect tense verb. It's done, completed action with present results. His judgment is set. No way out of it. He's finished. So, he took care of him, took back keys to hell and death, liberated man from having to go to hell, and this guy's judged now, so that's the way it's going to be. But then there was a third part. The land. We got to recover the land. We got to recover the earth. Leviticus 25, verse 23 and 24. Look what it says. The land shall not be sold forever, for the land is mine. That's why God didn't sell it forever. It was a lease for the 6,000 years, as we pointed out. You're strangers and sojourners with me. In all the land of your possession, you shall grant a redemption for the land. There's a right of redemption for the land. The land can be repossessed. The right of possession has to come from inheritance. Remember what we saw? He had the right of redemption. He had the right of the possession of inheritance. That means that this could be taken as part of your inheritance according to spiritual law. So, what did Jesus have to do for that one? First of all, he had to make a new covenant. Matthew chapter 26. In verse 28, he declares also what his blood did. This is the blood of the New Testament. I'm making a new covenant, which is shed for many for the remission. Remember, remission means to release from bondage and imprisonment, where you're not going to be a sinner any longer. You're going to get a brand new spirit. You're not going to be a sinner any longer because of this New Testament. And of course, a testament cannot come into force until the testator, the one who made it, dies. The will has no effect until after the person dies, and then it goes to the heirs. Hebrews 9:15. For this cause he's the mediator of the New Testament, that by means of death, for the redemption of the transgressions that were under the First Testament. See, the First Testament was to set everything up because it brought the law brought the knowledge of sin, and they needed a Savior. And Jesus came and was the final sacrifice of that, which did it away. It finished it. That was the purpose for it. Remember, he said he came to take away the first covenant so we could establish the second. The first covenant was simply a vehicle to be able to do all these things so we could establish the second. The second is what God intended, which is the New Testament. That they which are called might receive the promise of eternal inheritance. For where a testament is, this New Testament that he made in his blood, there must also of necessity be the death of the testator. Is it come in force until the testator has died? No. For a testament is of force after men are dead. Otherwise, it's of no strength at all while the testator liveth. That's why Jesus, who made it, he had to die. And so he did die, of course. And remember, it was a spiritual death. He was separated from God. And so what happened when he got born from above, a firstborn, he got a brand new spirit. Jesus got a brand new spirit. It had to be a new spirit, otherwise he'd be the same person. Because notice he says, it's not a force until while the testator's living. So it can't be the same Jesus came up. He got a brand new spirit. Remember, he's the firstborn of all creation. Well, what does that mean now? Since he died, but now he got a new spirit, what does that make him? The heir. He's now the heir of the inheritance of the will, the New Testament, as a firstborn of the creation. Remember, he had to have the right of the possession of the inheritance, and that's exactly what Jesus got. As we pointed out, Satan thought that if he could kill him, the inheritance would be ours. Remember that? But it was a mistake, because it's the opposite. Jesus had to die to pay the price to redeem man in order to recover him and to purchase him and to bring forth the new creation. He also, his blood was shed to ratify the new covenant. And he was a firstborn in order to become the heir of the new covenant. And what is he now? He is the heir of all things. Remember what it says? Hebrews 1. In the last days he's spoken to us by his Son, whom is appointed heir of all things, because he is the heir of the New Testament. And part of the inheritance of the New Testament, as we saw earlier, is the earth. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Jesus is the heir who now has a right to inherit the earth. Now, going back to what we've said, 4,000 years to Christ, 2,000 years to the church age, 6,000 years, what happens then? The lease is done. Satan thought he could kill him and he'd get it and he wouldn't have to be under the lease. He'd have it forever. That didn't work because he didn't have the wisdom, was hidden wisdom. So, what's the answer now? Jesus now has accomplished the right of redemption. He fulfilled it. He accomplished the right of inheritance to become the heir, because now he's the heir. He did what was necessary to become the heir, and he brought the new covenant into being. Now what? It's time now, because he's fulfilled that. And remember that Jeremiah bought the earth with what? A deed of purchase. The title deed to the earth. Well, the judgment's done on the church. Now, John is brought up to see what's going to happen hereafter. I'm going to show you the things which must, necessary as binding, be hereafter, that were going to happen after that. So, as he's seeing what goes on up here, he's in spirit. He sees the throne in heaven, one sat on the throne, and he sees all what things in there. And we come down to verse 5. Out of the throne proceeds lightnings, thunderings, and voices. What's that all about? Lightning, thunder, and voices, that's all what brings judgment. That's the judgments that are getting ready to be released. We know that because of just looking at some of the other places in Revelation, chapter 8, verse 5. The angel took the censer, filled it with the fire of the altar, and cast it in the earth. There were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. Those are judgments. Chapter 10, when we see about the cry of the loud voices when the lion roareth, and when he had cried, 7 thunders uttered their voices. Those are the judgments that he wasn't allowed to write. He was going to write them. He said, no, you're going to seal these things up. They must be something compared to the rest of the ones. In Revelation chapter 11, we see again in verse 19, the temple of God was open in heaven. There was seen in his ark, the ark of his temple, the ark of his testament. There were lightnings and voices and thunderings and earthquake and great hail. These are all judgments. And we see one other place, chapter 16, verse 18. There were voices and thunders and lightnings and a great earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake and so great. Tremendous judgments are going to come during this time that are astounding. And that's exactly what he saw. We go back to Revelation chapter 4. So the judgments are getting ready. And the ones who are going to carry them out, he sees these four beasts, which are these angels, the seraphim. And these are the ones that the seraphim had the 6 wings. 6 wings about them. Remember, like in Isaiah, they had the 6 wings. That was the seraphim. Were crying, holy, holy unto the Lord. These are the ones that are going to carry this out. And we come down to verse 11. Thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for thou hast created all things. Now we have to show you there's a correction here that has to be done. Not for thy pleasure. It's a mistake. That's why I can't sing that song, Thou art worthy, because it's wrong. Because it's not pleasure. It's the word thelema, which means your will. It should not be translated that. We can't sing songs that aren't right. Thou hast created all things, and for thy will they are and were created. If you like that song, sorry. I got rid of it. We cannot sing anything. It's not true, see. So, we come to chapter 5 now. Now you see what's there. He's ready to do something. He's the worthy one. We see they're ready to get all these judgments being released, the voices, the thunders, the lightnings, all these things. And what's going to happen? After that deed of purchase that was kept for all those many days, the end of the church age is done. Now, the one who accomplished what was necessary for the retribution, the payback of the punishment for evil, who had fulfilled the right of redemption, the right of inheritance, he did it all. He's the one who conquered the enemy, can do something. I saw on the right hand and sat on the throne a book written within and on the backside, sealed with the 7 seals. This is this deed of purchase, which is the title deed to the earth. Strong angel proclaiming, who's worthy to open the book and loose the seals thereof? And they couldn't find anybody in heaven or earth or under the earth able to open the book or even to look on it. And he wept. He said, though, one of the elders said, weep not, behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has prevailed. This means, nakao, means conquered and carried off the victory. He has done it. Aorist tense is a simple past tense. He's accomplished it. To open the book and to loose the 7 seals. He did all that was necessary. That's why he could do it. And he is now going to open the title deed. Now we've seen, what about these seven seals, and then what's all written on the inside? We don't know what's all written on the inside, but we got a glimpse of it, what's written on the inside from Ezekiel. In Ezekiel chapter 2, verse 9, look what it says. This is when he spoke to him and he said, here he was supposed to eat what he gave to him, and he looked, and behold, a hand was sent unto me, and lo, a roll of a book was therein. What kind of a book was this? He spread it before me, and it was written within and without. That's a deed of purchase, same thing. And what's written within, therein? This is what's written on the inside. Tells you what's happening when he opens it up. Lamentations and mourning and woe. The word lamentations, when you look this up and follow this in the Theological Word Book of the Old Testament, 2018a, a note down here, it means prophetically of impending death and or destruction. And the mourning refers to a mourning over judgment, and the woe is a wailing. In other words, what's written on the inside? All the judgments. They're going to be poured out. And is this part of redemption? Yes, it is, because part of redemption is the avenging of the enemy. The payback, the retribution, the payback, the punishment for the evil that had to happen. And that's exactly what is going to happen. Revelation chapter 5, verse 7. He came and took the book out of the right hand of him that was upon the throne. Jesus has got this book, and he opens this. He's opened this thing. He's going to open this up because he's the one who's done it. Now, why? Look what it says in verse 9 and 10. And it's telling you he fulfilled what had to be done according to Jeremiah 32. They sung a new song saying, "Thou art worthy to take the book and open the seals thereof." For, why? Because you were slain and hast redeemed us to God by thy blood out of every kindred, tongue, people, and nation. He accomplished the right of redemption fulfillment. He redeemed us. And then look at the next part. And has made unto us our God kings and priests, and we shall reign on the earth. Well, why is that stuck in there? Because that speaks of the fulfillment of the second part, which is the right of the possession of the inheritance. What does that got to do with it? Because what's part of the inheritance? The inheritance is the kingdom. How God's not chosen the poor of this world, rich in faith, but the heirs of the kingdom, which he has promised to them that love him. And so that means if we are going to rule and reign, as it says in verse 10, which we are, well, that means we must have become heirs of the kingdom, which means we had to be heirs. And how did we become an heir? Because Jesus became an heir. He got the inheritance. He fulfilled it all. And you and I now are going to reign with him on the earth. So, having accomplished that, what's he going to do? We come here to in chapter 6. The Lamb opens one of the seals, and I heard it with a noise of thunder. That's the judgment. One of the four beasts saying, "Come and see." And I beheld a white horse. Who's always riding something that's white? Jesus or the angels or anything that's of God and good. Not the devil. This isn't the devil. This is Jesus. And he that sat on him had a bow. That was an instrument to launch arrows of a judgment. And a crown was given unto him, the Stephanos, which is the crown to the victor. He got the victory. He conquered the enemies. And he went forth conquering. So he's conquering. Present tense. And then it says, and to conquer. It's very interesting that it says to conquer. It's not a good translation. It's a subjunctive mood verb. The way you would instead he went forth continually conquering that he might conquer. That's why he translates it, that he may or might overcome or conquer. He had to conquer first so that he might conquer. Well, what's this first conquering so he can then conquer? Well, he's got to do something to get rid of the devil and all of his evil spirits. Look what happens in Revelation 12:7. There was war in heaven. Heaven is singular. It's not the heavens, it's in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels. There was a war. Satan and his angels were fighting against Michael and his angels in heaven. Otherwise, he's got to conquer and get this guy out of here first. Remember, he was accusing us before God night and day. And he prevailed not. He did not have the mighty force for it. Neither was there place found any more in heaven. He's kicked out. The great dragon was cast out, the old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceives the whole inhabited earth. He's cast out on the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. That's the first thing he's going to do on Nisan day 1. Nisan day 1, the first day of the month, the attack is going to be there, and they're going to be thrown out of the heavens, and they're going to be cast down to earth. No more are they going to be there. They're eliminated. That's why he says, I heard a great voice in heaven. Heaven. Now has come salvation, strength, kingdom of our God, the power of his Christ, for the accuser of our brethren is cast down and accused before our God day and night. It's going to be eliminated. Then 10 days later, when the Antichrist comes on the scene, Nisan day 10, to rule for 1,260 days until 3.5 years later on Tishri 10, when the final judgment comes and they're going to be eliminated. He and the false prophet will be cast into the lake of fire, and all the rest of these ones that are killed are going to be all in hell, because all the judgments are going to be poured out with the seals and the trumpets and the vials over the 3.5 years. Total destruction is going to come against everybody who has rejected Jesus and all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men. Jesus is going to bring retribution, which is part of redemption against all of the enemies. He's going to accomplish this great work. You and I, if we will walk in his ways, can be protected all the way through. If you're not quite walking right, or if you don't use your authority, you could get martyred out, but you'll still go to heaven. Of course, that's the most important thing, because he's going to, it says, rejoice, you heavens, and dwell in him. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea. The devils come down unto you, having great wrath, knowing he knoweth, because he knows he has but a short time. That's right. But remember, you still have authority over the devil. And God will protect you. The angels haven't quit and given up. No. They will have charge over to keep you all your ways if you do what he says and walk in his ways to be protected. So, Jesus accomplished what was necessary with the right of redemption and the right of the possession of the inheritance to open up the seals of the title deed that was already set for the repurchase of the earth. And it's now, he's going to be opening that up. And when? At the end of the 6,000 years, Nisan day 1, he's not going to waste a day. And the devils are going to be attacked, this dragon and all the evil spirits, and they're going to be cast out of heaven, and they're going to be down to the earth. They will not be in the heavens any longer, heaven or heavens any longer. They're finished. And the war will be on for the next 3.5 years against all of the ungodliness to bring the judgments. And you and I, if we're still alive, we'll be here to be protected throughout the time as we walk with the Lord until the end, when the catching up of the church will be with the fulfillment of the Feast of Trumpets. And then we go back to heaven for 10 days for the marriage supper of the Lamb. And then we come back with him when the final judgment comes on the Day of Atonement and the destruction of the nations, their final judgment, with the false prophet and the man of sin being tossed into the lake of fire. And then 5 days later, the millennial reign of Jesus will begin, and he'll begin to rule and reign on earth for 1,000 years. And you and I will be ruling and reigning with him. Walk with the Lord, fulfill everything in your life. Don't make any mistakes and give place to anything that would cause you not to be right with God. You follow him. He'll complete his great work. We're going to see a tremendous ride as we go down these last days. The New World Order will arise. All these evil guys, they're crazy, and they're going to get worse. Evil men will wax worse and worse. But even though the earth is covered with the darkness, I'll just show one last scripture we'll show you before we stop. I know we've gone quite a while over, but there's a lot to cover in this. Arise, shine, the light has come, the glory of the Lord's risen upon thee, on the end time church. The darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people. Yeah, that's right. But the Lord shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. The glorious church will manifest. And you are to be a part of that glorious church and walk in the ways of the Lord and see God accomplish everything that he purposes in you and through you. Say this with me. Heavenly Father, I thank you for the Word of God that brings revelation of what will happen after the judgment of the church at the end of the church age, when Jesus, having fulfilled the right of redemption and the right of inheritance, continues to perform the redemptive work of bringing the retribution, the payment, the punishment for the evil upon all those who have rejected him and have walked in unrighteousness or ungodliness or lawlessness. I thank you that Jesus conquered to open up the book, to bring forth this final judgment, and to take possession of the earth again. I thank you that I will be a part who are ruling and reigning in the millennial reign, because I will work out my salvation with fear and trembling. I will be a part of the glorious end-time church. I will walk in all the ways of the Lord and be holy, without spot, without blemish, unrebukable, unreprovable, holy unto the coming of the Lord. I thank you for this great revelation of what is going to come. And I thank you that as I walk in your ways, you will have your way in my life. I will be protected, and I will be used of you as a part of the glorious church, to do the mighty works of the Lord and to win people to the Lord. I thank you. My eyes are on you, and I will walk in all your ways all the days of my life. In Jesus' name, amen. Praise God. Father, I thank you for this tremendous message of revelation of what Jesus has accomplished and what is going to happen, that is about to come at the end of these days. Father, we thank you. We will take heed to your word and walk in all your ways and see you accomplish your great work and be ready for what is coming. Thank you for your great work of redemption, that you fulfilled the right of redemption and the right of the possession of the inheritance by accomplishing everything that was necessary. Thank you for all you've done, and thank you for what you're going to do, and we will be there with you, ruling and reigning in the millennial reign. Thank you for all you accomplish. We will be hearers and doers of your word every day of our life and walk uprightly with a perfect heart in holiness and righteousness all the days of our life. In Jesus' name, amen. Praise God.